Commercial coal mining started in the U.S. in 1701. They seen big gains during World War I. Even before they joined the war, the U.S. exported coal to their allies in Europe. When the war ended, the demands for coal declined majorly. Because of this, the companies started losing profit, so they made cutbacks by exploiting their workers. The way they exploited their workers is when a person signed up to be a coal miner, you were provided with clothes and tools, and even a home. It seemed like a good deal, but the trick was you had to pay a tool fee out of your pay. They had a company store, which usually would be the only store in your town, that would charge whatever prices they wanted for needed goods. Instead of money, coal companies would pay their workers in scrip, a form of currency that could only be used at their stores. Coal mining was hard and dangerous. It was common for miners to die from walls caving in, explosions, or falling in the dark caves. If they made it, they eventually died from black lung and other diseases caused by inhaling coal dust. Coal companies would maintain order by subsidizing local law enforcement and bribing government officials. They had the law on their side. They employed men from the Baldwin Felts Company. They were in charge of supervising the coal miners and occasionally roughing them up to keep them in line and prevent any kind of union activity. Representatives from the United Mine Workers of America would sneak into town, disguising themselves as salesmen, quietly engaging with coal miners until somebody listened or they were caught and chased out of town. Coal miners were hesitant to unionize because they were taught not to trust unions, and company-friendly preachers would claim unions were communists. Eventually, in 1902, over in Pennsylvania, they did come together and launch a strike. After giving an empty gesture raise, followed by a price hike in the company store, they created a 163-day work stoppage. Around 147,000 coal miners took part of this strike, resulting in President Roosevelt getting involved and mediating an agreement with the workers and company owners. It was the beginning of the mine wars. Despite the racism at the time, all races, immigrants, and native-born workers stood together to seek fair pay and safer work conditions. In West Virginia, the coal companies responded by evicting workers from company-owned housing. Displaced miners set up a tent compound a few miles away from their former homes. Baldwin Felts agents began shooting up their tents with machine guns. The coal miners, wounded and scared, still stood their ground, resulting in the Stone Mountain Coal Corporation sending the Baldwin Felts agents to bribe officials. Albert Felts, brother of one of the Baldwin Felts founders, hand-delivered a bribe offered by the coal company to Mayor C.C. Testerman. Felts wanted to station machine guns on various roofs around town, but out of loyalty to the mining community, the mayor refused the bribe. Police Chief Sid Hatfield also refused their bribe. He was a former miner known for his marksmanship and being related to the Hatfield side of the Hatfield-McCoy feud. He made it his mission to oppose the Baldwin Felts agents during the months leading up to the confrontation. He'd often aid miners and their families as they were being evicted. All this fueled animosity between the two factions, which pushed Felts to pull his gun during the railroad standoff on May 19, 1920 in Matewan, West Virginia. Felts shot Mayor Testerman, and Police Chief Hatfield shot Felts. At the end of the shootout, 10 men are dead. Mayor Testerman, 2 miners, and 7 Baldwin Felts detectives, including Albert Felts and his brother Lee. This was the first time the miners had won against Baldwin Felts. This was known as the Matewan Massacre. 15 months later, in McDowell County, West Virginia, August 1st, 1921, Sid Hatfield, his friend Ed Chambers, their wives, and a bodyguard walked up a courthouse steps, acquitted of all charges stemming from the massacre. Hatfield and Chambers were in court facing new charges regarding a raid of a Scab Run coal mine. They were supposed to be more protected, but were met by a hit squad. Baldwin Felts agents, trying to get their get back for the 7 agents that were killed in the massacre, popped out, shot 4 rounds into Chief Hatfield's chest. A third gunman shot Chambers in the neck and kept firing as Chambers rode down the steps. They then planted weapons on their bodies so they could claim self-defense in court. Their deaths made them heroes in the mining community. It also fueled the United Mine Workers. They argued on what their next step should be. They made a list of demands to West Virginia Governor Ephraim Morgan, asking to free the miners in prison during the Mingo Uprising. The miners took to the streets in both Mingo and Logan counties. Anti-union officials called state police to end the protests. This escalated tensions when a trooper accidentally hit a parked car and armed officers surrounded the owner. Pissed off miners took the troopers' guns and began patrolling the roads themselves, keeping the police out. On August 20th, 600 miners settled in a town outside of Charleston, with many more from nearby counties en route. UMW leadership seemed to want to talk them out of marching to Mingo and demanding the other miners be free, but the miners were fed up. After a few days, the amount of miners willing to do an armed march went up to 10,000, equipped with a variety of weapons, including rifles they used to fight in World War I. The coal miners began their march to free their Union brothers. In order to get to Mingo, they'd have to take Logan County, and before even doing that, they'd have to cross over Blair Mountain. Sheriff Chafin caught wind of the plan and swore no armed mob would cross into Logan. He rounded up everyone he could, from deputies and vigilantes to strikebreakers and local farmers. He collected weapons from the county's armory and local hardware stores. He had his squad digging trenches and dropping trees to block roads. The coal companies helped him financially, helping him get a fleet of cars to transport his men when necessary. Governor Morgan wasn't too sure Chafin can hold the miners back, so he made a call to President Warren Harding and the Secretary of War. He demanded troops, but they shined him off, so he complained to the New York Times and applied media pressure. This got him the results he wanted. On August 27th, General Harry Bandholtz met with the governor and asked if he had done everything he could to avoid the uprising. The governor lied and said yes. Bandholtz, trying to avoid conflict, summoned Union leaders. He told them if the uprising caused the president to call for martial law, many miners would die and they would be held accountable. The Union leaders drove around, gathering miners, and convinced most of them to go home. But one miner wasn't going for it. His name was Bad Lewis White. He stole a train a day before all this, planning to take it to Blair Mountain and eventually Logan County as part of an armed attack. He seemed to be riding around on his bike, pumping up miners again. The Union leaders suspected he was working with the coal companies to provoke a conflict. Sheriff Chafin stirred the pot up some more by ordering state police to serve warrants against the miners who had embarrassed and took guns from the mounted troops a few days before. The warrants sparked another shootout with a few men killed and both sides taking prisoners. Words of the gunfight spread, firing up the miners. The March on Mingo was officially back on. Led by Bill Blizzard, miners got together, planning to attack Chafin's defenses on Blair Mountain. They planned to attack from two sides, but even though they had more numbers, they had to climb uphill towards machine guns and planned positions. Chafin sent 3 rented planes to drop bombs on the miners, but they missed their mark, and nobody was injured from the air attack. But Chafin's forces did keep them out of Logan. On September 1st, while firefights continued, General Bandholtz returned and offered amnesty to any miner that would stop and go home. But at this point, the miners had no trust for them and didn't comply, so Bandholtz ordered the troops in. But most of the miners, being veterans, didn't want to fire on U.S. troops, so this created a kind of ceasefire, and both sides thought the federal soldiers were a mutual mediator. Both sides also thought the army would be on their side. But even though General Bandholtz blamed it mostly on Governor Morgan, miners were the ones mostly taken into custody. The 2 Union leaders and Bill Blizzard faced charges of treason, but only Blizzard went to trial, where he was acquitted using the government's abuse of power as a cornerstone in his case. Regardless, bad press and the coal company's manipulation of public view, many labor unions, especially the UMW, were weakened. Their membership dropped drastically, and their credibility wasn't repaired till the 1940s. The intense battle and its aftermath spurred the union movement and contributed to the federal government eventually creating labor reforms and legislation. To this day, the struggle between miners and coal companies continues.